Hey everybody, thanks for joining. We have another owner-operator episode here. We have Jon Schemmel on. John, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Dennis.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. For those that don't know John, he's the CEO and co-founder of SBL Ventures. SBL owns and operates 17 laundromats, and John's background is in scaling and building systems for laundromat ownership. So really excited to have him on. John and his team recently have grown to 28 members over the last 4 years, buying their first laundromat in September of 2020. And for a lot of folks out there interested in laundromats, an excellent operator knows a lot about what can go right and also about what can also go wrong in these kinds of transactions. So, John, let's start with the misconception in the laundry industry. I've heard these are very passive investments and that I can kind of sit on the beach and put my feet up and run them with no operational input. You recently tweeted out a picture in November of you swimming in laundromat water in a basement in one of your broken nights of fixing things. Can you kind of talk about how laundromats, to kick it off and get right into it, are not passive investments?
Yeah, they're just as passive as the dermatologist with his bandage on the side of my head. So I apologize for that. That was not planned for today. But yeah, so I mean, we kind of joke internally. I've got a couple partners, and when we bought the first one, I grew up in the business. My dad was a Maytag distributor, so I grew up collecting coins and fixing machines. We called it Lint Patrol with no HVAC facilities in Mississippi. And summer jobs, and it wasn't passive, I'll tell you that. So fast forward through a corporate career, we bought one in September 2020, and I remember my partner and I went and it was closing day. It came with a car wash, which also is not passive. And we closed and went over, got the keys, and we're like, holy crap, there's employees here. How are we going to pay them? You got to set up payroll, and there's just a lot of things in any business you buy that people don't think about and you don't plan for. You really focus on the good, and you focus on the fact that the machines are robots. But laundries can be semi-passive. That's our word. And they're semi-passive depending on how semi-passive you want to make them. So there's a lot of different strategies out there. There are a lot of consolidators out there that go in and day one they retool immediately. That's not our strategy. We generally run the assets for their full life cycle, and then put systems around them to make them run similarly despite the brand. And then you have some folks that they have a core W-2 job. I saw the podcast you had last week. I know that guy. And so they got the W-2 and they want one or two.
That anonymous guy last week? Yeah, that guy.
Yeah, he's a good dude. That's not a bad path either. That's it's more of an investment type path, and then it's more owner time, et cetera, in the stores. And frankly, my agreement with the partners was I was going to be the day-to-day operating partner to start, and man, it was way less passive than you give it credit for. And a lot of it's a learning curve, right? Knowing what's important, what's not important. But that was 4 years ago, and now we've got 28 team members. We'll be on our 17th acquisition in January. And we're fairly spread out. We're in the Midwest. So we've got store from my house, furthest store. We were just there is nearly 3 hours. But the example you gave was I was driving back from our newest acquisition this coming January from doing some scouting on a Sunday night. By the way, your busiest day is Sunday, so you can go and give up your weekend.
There you go.
And you get the call.
Downside number one. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of lucky actually, and now I've got a water sensor installed, but we have one store that has a basement, okay? And you can imagine these high torque machines with massive final spins and what that does on a basement structure. We had a couple of machine issues, so I called one of my support guys for the store near my house, and I said, hey man, can you pop over there and just see what's going on? He's a great guy. He said, no, it sounds good. And he went and we always go downstairs just in case, because all our plumbing goes down there just in case something's going on or it stopped up or whatever. It's a pretty good system. And he stopped down and he called me. He's like, Schemmel, man, we got a flood down here. And I can't, he's a pretty handy guy. He owns a bunch of multifamily and he couldn't figure it out. So I get over there and we hadn't had to do this yet, but basically the flood started from our main drain we have a filter system and everything, but somehow a Cheez-It bag got through our entire plumbing and filter system and stopped up the main drain perfectly with something just behind it. And so, as you can imagine, a Sunday night, it's, a 30-year business in one day. You got water flowing down. So we were, I had clothes. Those clothes are now gone. My wife made me take them out to the trash. But I had my arm.
It didn't make it into the house. Yeah.
Yeah. And those are just things, that, I'd say my biggest lesson learned in the last 4 years is always have a backup and we say a backup to the backup, right? Plan for it like a company, plan for it. People take vacations, they have flat tires and they get sick. So always have a way to still run your life and don't let the business run you. I think I said that on Jordan's podcast, Big Laundromat Guide, maybe a year ago about this time. And, find a way in laundries to run the business and don't let it run you. And the coolest thing about it, and the misconception of it being passive is, look, they're robots. We own 17 houses of robots. And I always argue, like, even 30-year-old machines are way ahead of the AI technology curve. I mean, a customer approaches the machine, they generally know what to do. The machine tells them how much money to put in if you're still using coins, et cetera, or a card. Then once it starts, it tells them how long that cycle will be. You can watch the action if you want. And then customers inherently know they need to take that to the dryer, where you do the same thing. There's no accounts receivable. So if everything works perfectly, you don't really need someone there. And that's probably 90% of the business. Then you got 10% where it doesn't work perfectly. You get the machine messes up. You've got customers that love to over soap it, overfill it, et cetera. So those are that 10% is the reason that, it's not passive. And frankly, you go to a laundromat because you want to clean your clothes. So an expectation is that it's a clean environment. And naturally, when you have lots of folks enter your store, like on a Sunday or whatever it may be, it becomes unclean, even with the best of intentions. The trash gets full, the soap spills, somebody opens the door a little early when it's still draining, so you get water everywhere. So we've kind of set up the company to where we probably overstaff and overlabor a little bit. But everything we do is around our principles of clean, efficient, friendly. That's it. To run a self-service laundromat, those are the three things you need. Keep the store clean. Efficient is basically keeping the machines working. We have a 99.1% asset uptime on over 700 assets right now. And then friendly. I would say we generally, versus probably other operators, we err on the side of just giving the refund unless it's a repeat offender. And we're about speed and moving forward and not dwelling on, a $2 problem. So
clean, efficient, friendly. People don't really think about friendly in the business plan often when they're doing this stuff.
No. And I've seen, you should read some Google reviews pre-acquisition. There's, when you're unfriendly, those are the reviews that pop up.
Definitely. Especially on those Google reviews. People don't realize how much that impacts small business owners sometimes. But for those out there that are maybe thinking about coming from the corporate world, right? I think it's a big jump for them mentally. So how do you think about, when did you, after buying your first one, for like inflection points kind of going through in 2020, you bought your first one. How many months was it until you felt like, oh, I kind of know what I'm doing versus coming in every day and reacting to, whatever's wrong or that has to be fixed that day?
I'd say it really took a good 6 months. And honestly, it was kind of, we still do a lot of cash, right? And we don't have the same exact payment systems everywhere. For sure, we didn't have it back then in the beginning. One of the biggest steps was really taking like a step back. I come from a manufacturing environment, so I ran corporate businesses for one of the largest manufacturers in a particular segment in the world. And so I really learned a lot about P&Ls and trying to optimize businesses and attack bottlenecks. And it took me like 6 months from September to say February, March to step back and say, all right, I'm at these stores. We got 3. I mean, basically we bought our first one in September 2020. We bought 2 more within 60 days. And those 2 were projects. One was closed and one was mostly broken. for a guy that really didn't know exactly what's going
You
on.
really took it nice. You really took it slow in
Yeah,
your entry.
yeah, and also was the CEO of another small little company, so locally here. So anyway, it was an interesting 6 months. But after about 6 months, I stepped back and said, okay, what's governing me right now? What is driving my schedule? I'm at these stores 6 days a week, Sundays, et cetera, and really the collection schedule, right? Because there's only so much capacity in a coin box for until those fill up, and once that coin box fills up, you're out of business for that machine. Your change machine, right? You can fill it up, but then you got to start doing math on how much business do I get on a Sunday? So do I need to hit it Saturday night and then Monday morning? So really honing in that collection schedule I did that over the first 6 months. But the big step was, if that's what's governing my schedule, I need somebody else to do it. I can put somebody else on that schedule. So then how do I do that? My dad was in the business. He thought I was nuts trying to hire somebody else to touch your money. But you'd be surprised what you can do with audit systems, even in a cash business. I mean, I kind of joke that Sam Walton's not the guy, the Walton family's not taking every dollar that's coming into Walmart. They take cash. Okay. It's just about, it's a different type of register. So we put in an audit system, hired someone actually as a sole job to collect our money. And it's honestly now our model. I haven't done a collection in months, man. But fast forward to now, we have an app where we kind of do everything. We have expectations of that collector every time that machine's open. So we've taken a cash audit system to the next level. I don't want to get into all the details of it and everything, but we have a very strict schedule on how these things need to go. But
maybe you could share a story on, do you ever have any problems with just in terms of collections? It's a lot of work with these up front, of actually physically putting the coins into the bank, or having the bank have some questions on you, figuring that kind of stuff out.
So I get that all the time. They're like, hey, are you just carrying bags of quarters to the bank? All right, back in the 80s, 90s, yes, you were. That's what we did growing up. Now you're just recycling it within the store. Generally, more quarters walk out of the store than stay in the store. Especially we have dollar coins in certain stores, those stay in. So we're generally buying coin from the bank. And so then it's really just a matter of having a relationship with a good, whether it's a local bank, regional bank, national bank, having a good relationship with a branch that will support you and then know kind of what your needs are. So we kind of forecast for them, because you'd be surprised how repetitive the business is. I mean, it's not like every week's exactly the same, but you can start projecting with some reasonable certainty when you're going to need coin. It may take every other 3 weeks or every other 2 weeks, but it's within a ballpark.
So for those out there, early on, you don't have to buy 3 right away, but there are some ways around some of this coin stuff here, and to think about from a strategic standpoint. I guess, after you made that first 6 months, you kind of took a step back, as you said, and looked at your schedule. You're at 17 now. So when did you think, okay, we might have something here, and it might be time to take our system elsewhere on the road?
That was really midway through 23. So I'll kind of go through the thing. So we bought 3, September 2020, October 2020, December 1st, 2020. For the 2 that were projects, we added some new equipment. We had to do some things. We fixed up what they had, and they're 2 pretty good stores now. And luckily, because of condition, we bought them very, very well. And back then it was 4% interest.
But different now.
Yeah, but as you're in there, I built up a lot of local relationships, and 2 of the ones we bought were from guys that owned stores elsewhere in the proximity of this particular area. And so you just develop relationships, right? And you kind of say, at first I was like, oh, I don't know if we want any more, man. Like this is a little overwhelming. You're trying to learn, do I really want to do this as a career? Or at least as one of the companies of my career. And kind of made a decision in the next acquisition was Halloween the next year. And it was one of those owners that approached me, and he was moving on to go do something else. Great guy, about my age. And he had a pretty big store. To date, it's our biggest store. So we ended up getting the deal, as our biggest deal at that point. And I remember talking to my 2 partners at the time, and we all were kind of like, it was a 7-figure deal. It was the first time we'd ever done that, and we said, all right, hope this is good, And I'm a P&L guy. Everything told me it was good. I mean, and at that time I knew enough about the equipment and the business where it definitely it was one of our best deals. And then that was probably the time when we said, okay, we got 4 now. We've kind of got I got some part-time maintenance to help me. I was down there maybe at that time 2 or 3 days a week. This by the way, this where we were buying these things was an hour and 15 minutes from my house. So every time I had to go down there for some emergency, you got to add a couple hours.
2 hours, yeah.
So I tried to batch my time. Basically, we said, okay, let's keep going. We know there's 2 other ones in town where we know the owner very well, and it's just a matter of maybe a time when he's ready to move on. And so that, and another great guy, I'm going to see him next week. We ended up making a deal for his 2 other ones that next September of 2022. And so, interesting. And that's kind of when I'd say that was the moment we said, okay, now we have a semi-sizable business here. We have scale in a particular area, and you can build a team around it. And that was my background in my career was managing businesses and teams. And so we kind of made the decision then of, all right, we should probably, for the sake of the business, have somebody that is an owner operator here in the city to be able to handle things more in real time versus, when a machine breaks on a Monday, I may not be down there till Thursday for whatever reason. But versus handling things real time, we believe in that. We believe in, if you get an alert right now that says a water valve's out, we're probably changing it this afternoon.
Yeah, I think it's something like 87% of laundromat customers come back, but if the equipment doesn't work, they leave. Is kind of how it reads in the data, at least.
Oh yeah, we hate out of order tags. And honestly, when it's fresh like that, the more repetitive you get, and the higher sense of urgency, you just get better. It creates a hunger with you. So I had this guy, great guy. He approached me one day in the bank, and this was early 2022, and local guy. He was in there looking at talking to the bank about a duplex, and I had like 5 bags of cash, and he comes up and he's like, "Hey man, I don't want a private. Like, what do you do? What do you do? Like, nobody just walks in with 5 bags of cash." And I said, he said, "Are you in real estate?" And I said, "Kinda." I said, "We own a lot of real estate that just happens to be laundromats." And so we ended up having a meeting next week, having a beer, and he ended up helping part-time in 2022. And then, he made the jump from, he had no background in this. He grew up on a farm, so handy guy. But he was actually a commodities broker and transitioned to laundromats. And now he basically kind of he has all day-to-day responsibility there locally. And as we've expanded, that team still reports up to him. And we've hired some support areas around him to make sure he doesn't get too stretched. But so that was kind of when we had the 6. That was when we said, it's early still to go at really and afford a new guy, especially somebody you're going to give equity, or allow into the equity table, et cetera. But I always make the argument on, as that time alleviated, particularly for me. And then my partner, who's my brother-in-law, my main partner is my brother-in-law. He was coming into business full time. He was in some transition in his life. 2023 is when we kind of said, okay, we all have more time. We should go hunt. Instead of kind of just letting it come, we went and started playing offense a little bit. And that was then starting to reach out to other owners and just you never know. It's crazy the timing on some of this stuff, because you just never know what's in people's heads in terms of what they want to do. A laundromat, if you own one, it can be a big headache. And if you just keep doing it every single day, it's a very repetitive business. The money repeats, which is nice, not perfectly or whatever. The problems also repeat. It's not. So it's one of those where if you if you try and manage everything yourself, you can drive yourself nuts, and it's an imperfect business, so you have to expect problems. But it's just a matter of, do you attack those positively with a positive, outlook, or how do I create backups to backups or systems that can get that so I can continue growth. So we really, I would just say at the end of 2022 was when we said we need to probably put our foot on the gas a little bit, because it's a good P&L. It's a tough thing to grow. I mean, there's some areas where we've gone in and the guys hadn't raised prices in 15 years. Their P&L's not so good, kind of dirty, whatever. So we'll go in and we'll paint, we'll clean up, we'll fix all the machines, and then we'll generally make a healthy price increase day one, because the P&L hadn't kept up with input costs. So, but almost all the time that happens, we get thanked, because people want a clean place to go. But yeah, I'd say so, and we're still on offense, man. I mean, I think we kind of got our radius defined. We're definitely interested in areas beyond our core radius here, but our goal every day we wake up is making sure that our equipment is working correctly. Our team is in a safe environment and fulfilling their side of the bargain we have pretty tight schedules, that we're not going backwards in any store. We watch collection rates, et cetera, just to see. They'll tell you if there's a problem. There's some seasonality to it, but you start getting multiple weeks in a row where you have a problem, you kind of, maybe there's something else going on that we haven't seen yet. We like to do store audits, just pop in and just see what it looks like on a Tuesday. So we have a team. Our stores get touched. I'd say there's always a morning clean, an evening clean. We have 4 stores we do wash, dry, fold. And then there's generally some, either a collector or the operating partner or whatever. Generally, every store is walked into by some member of the company 3 times a day.
Thank you. That's really helpful for those who are trying to install systems. It's very impressive to go, the way you folks have going from 3 to now 17 of those, and the only way to do that's with good systems. I think one point you touched on that's very important for a lot of folks is the machines themselves. You've obviously now had quite a bit of deal experience here going through this stuff. And when you're buying a laundromat, the machines are everything, up front when you're looking at these things. Could you give folks there just some broad numbers on, how you kind of look at a new laundromat, and what kind of percentage of machines you think, I have to replace those, or these look okay, or is it all different per different laundromat?
We kind of value laundromats strategically. One, is it a store that fits where we want to service customers, right? Does it fit? Is it going to compete with us, or are we already there? And then also, when you're looking specifically at the equipment, we don't pay a whole lot of attention to brand. We have every brand underneath the sun, and fundamentally they all have pros and cons. In general, I mean, we haven't found a brand that's just like bad. I think all of them have a lot of positives. And age doesn't, bother us. Obviously, if it's super old equipment and it's all broken, we're probably going to try and buy that for a serious deal. If it's,
I guess, most people say they last, 10 to 20 years. Some folks say they last up to 35. So it's probably all over the place.
It is. And I think during the span of those lifetimes, a little bit depends on the owner, right? Did they keep up with it? It's no different than it's like your car. So if you don't start your car for a year, you think it's going to start? Let's say you get something wrong with it, the battery's messed up or whatever. Generally, you're going to go take care of that in the moment, and it's not going to sit there. Wash machines are the same thing. So we probably have 10 machines that we call them zombies. Just we haven't decided to replace them. They're sitting there. We harvest them for parts. But it's maybe one in a particular store, and we just say, for now, it's okay. It's not revenue impacting. And we're always looking for deals and equipment or specials or whatever. But I'd say I don't have a problem buying 30-year-old equipment and running it for 5 years if I feel like it was well maintained. Our second store was that way. It was closed. The seller had a health issue, so they had to shut it down. But over the life of that store, they took very good care of their equipment. So we were able to put the lights back on, and we've replaced a little bit of it. But some of those machines in there are still 30 years old, and some customers prefer it. Now, we get hit on the utility bills a little bit, so it uses more water.
Not as efficient. Yeah.
We basically did a half retool there. All the dryers got ripped out in the first 2 years because it was just those were those were old Speed-Queens.
Need a little TLC.
Dryers.
Yeah.
And like the quarter acceptors were bad, and so we replaced some of those. By the time you start changing all these parts, it's like, all right, we're just going to go back to one. And they just didn't look very good. And there was one moment I walked in, it's 11 stack dryers, so 22 pockets, and I had 7 tags there. And I was getting to the point, I thought I was pretty good at it, and I was getting to the point, I'm like, I can't fix these anymore. I'm running out of, I'm having a hard time diagnosing them, and I take a lot of pride in my ability to do that. And so I called my partner Dylan, and I just said, hey man, we're about to spend $100,000. We're going to flip all these out. And we did. So we replaced it. We owned it for 2 years, ran them with those dryers. We got the revenue going, got the customers back. The dryers were the biggest complaint. And so we replaced them all. And now you walk in, you see brand new dryers, 11 pockets, all 30 pounders. We replaced 2 washers in there. And so it's a half retooled store, but it's a nice store.
Yeah.
It's done very well. So
I'm sure to your point too, you guys cleaned it up a lot, and not outside the machines, everything else was touched. But if you can run the machines a little bit, to your point, and kind of bend, don't break until you really have to replace them, is probably the right strategy when you're taking these things over.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the equipment is just, it's one of those things. And the other flip side of the examples, we bought stores where there's certain pieces that hadn't run in multiple years. And sometimes we'll just go rip those out and just replace them, because by the time they've been harvested on, parts are out, I'll spend 4 weeks diagnosing it, and you're just got problem after problem after problem. So that's really why, other than the customer experience, we try and stay on our maintenance. If you get behind, it's easy to get overwhelmed, and then you forget. I mean, we document everything very well in an app system, but you kind of forget what you need to do on that particular machine if it just sits idle for a while, and then other components go bad as it sits idle. So here's an example. Last night, there's one store here. It's my little pet store. It's 2 miles from my house. This is where it flooded. I was out of town.
So it's your favorite.
Of course, I leave town Tuesday morning. Had some meetings in a different area of the region, and we were frankly we kind of wanted to go see some different technologies at some different competitors and other guys that are consolidating. So kind of went on a little road show. And of course, right when you take off, you get the note. It's like, hey, these 3 washers are, one's a slow drain error, it's dexterous. Just means something's to the drain valve. The other is a COM error. Generally means the inverter's overheating. Maybe the fan needs to be blown out or whatever. Small stuff. So all this happens on Tuesday. So I go over there last night, and we get them back going. We're there for an hour. But I started. So the one that had the drain problem, fixed it. It was the most common problem is the metal bra strap. Metal in the bra strap gets in your drain valve and keeps the drain valve open. So basically, it can't pull water in a washer. And that's real. It's funny. It's crazy the amount of bra straps we put out there. So pulled it out, started up. No water's coming in. Why? Because it sat idle for 3 days of soapy water. It kind of dried out. So the pressure tube, which acts kind of like the spine between the main control board and the washer, it kind of regulates when water enters and doesn't enter, etc. It was just clogged, basically full of sediment, so it couldn't communicate back and forth because it sat there even for a period of 3 days. And imagine then, take that for like a machine that sat there for a year. Good luck. So that's why we want to stay on it, and we try and get the stuff in real time because it will prolong the life of our equipment, which means I'm prolonging the profitability of my P&L, as well as we're prolonging, and enhancing our customers' experience.
One other thing we haven't talked about is you obviously have a large footprint now and security and surveillance for these sites. Do you run your stores during 9 to 5 hours or the 24/7? And then two, how do you think about security and surveillance and talk about maybe a story there?
Uh, every store actually is 24/7 minus two. So we generally will buy a store and try and operate it as the previous operator did, from an hour standpoint. We got to get the flow of the store. Every store is a little bit different. Clientele is a little bit different. Different size change machines, different machines, whatever. You got to understand the store. You want to get a baseline of your revenue, et cetera. We generally will run. A lot of them come with like DVR cameras. So if we can salvage what's in there, we will. It's generally just an extra app on your phone. It's a pain in the butt to transfer over, but if we can do that, otherwise we'll install our own. And we've kind of been trying to consolidate on one system, as just to simplify. I believe in simplification. We also, there is a laundry. There's a bunch of good guys on Twitter and gals on Twitter that are big on laundries. And it's kind of fun just to I'll throw a tweet out there. It's like, hey, laundry Twitter, what do you guys do for this? And it's amazing what you get back. It's awesome. And I've met a lot of these guys personally. One of the guys I met via Twitter, I invested in this business. It's crazy how social media can kind of connect you that way. So we've got different ways to talk to people in the stores, that we learn on Twitter, and sound alarms. And so we've got some surveillance. We are considering, utilizing, I know you've had some guys on here and I see it a lot, like Huber and these guys, you said Matt's earlier, offshore support. So having some guys help us overnight, and then just with the protocol. So we're taking a look at that to see if we really need it. We're in an area of the country we catch a lot of riffraff, no doubt. But it's a little
Things
different.
break, things happen.
It's probably a little different than your super major metro type areas, So, but yeah, so we've got cameras everywhere. We have the ability to talk to the stores. We have the ability to go back and audit. We've got, we can check when people, like our staff, we can go back and audit, when they entered, when they left, everything. So, and that's where, so my brother-in-law, this thing really started in 2018. Me and my brother-in-law bought this triplex in a small town in Iowa where he lives, and it started our business ventures, I guess, together. And he managed that. We don't own it. We don't own it anymore. But he's 10 years younger than me. He's not a millennial, but he's close enough to be kind of the tech guy on the company. And so he's really he came in full time, we call it, beginning of January. And I mean, we talk every day, but he's kind of been the one that's challenged the status quo and said, all right, how do we get better audit systems from our employees in locks and everything like that? How do we have internet in every store? Let's use it, So
yeah,
that's been a fun journey. We're by no means perfect there. We are looking at making some shifts to make our lives even easier. But and so I think 2025 is gonna be a fun year. So yeah, we're just constantly looking at how do we get better every single day.
Yeah, no, and then I think from there, would love to hear more about how you think, as you just touched on, you guys started back in 2018, bought your first mat 2020. How's the market changed in the last 4 years? A lot of more conversations. For those looking for help, you can reach out to Twitter online for operational help, but that also means there's a lot more bidders in the market and buyers. Are you seeing a lot more price increases out there?
Yeah, it's a pretty illiquid market, I'll call it, at least where I'm at, just because obviously we've purchased quite a few, but they just don't come up for sale every day. And if they do, they're almost off market. I would say just some of the pricing I've seen on where they are on market, some of it's kind of nuts. At least for one store, I could see it. You go buy a chain, and everything's in place and it's turnkey. You're going to pay a premium for that. I get it. But I'd say what's changed is, if I go to like themes of the industry right now, and I'm probably not the best guy to ask for this. I feel like we're a little bit. Everybody's focused on, in my opinion, not everybody, but the market's focused on technology. How do you, coins? People just don't carry coins anymore. How do you transition that to whether it's cards or whatever it may be, apps, etc. So that's a big theme in my opinion. Honestly, the washer technology, manufacturers will argue, but I don't think it's changed a whole lot. It's got more efficient, uses less utilities, lower cycle times, etc. That's good. But also, like, I think there's an emerging consolidation theme. I do think, I believe in that. I think it's early. Everybody I talk to is it's in the early innings there, because it is a profitable business, and as it becomes more, less, it's still gonna be cash, but like as it becomes more automated, from a like a reporting standpoint, it's easier to run it as a company. So I think there's a theme there, and then I also think there's just this theme of there's especially there's fewer people going to trade schools, right? So that means there's probably fewer handier people out there. So there's a lot of operators that don't know how to work on their stuff, and we've insourced that. We've only had one outside tech ever come to a store, so we just we've had a lot of help. We have great distributor partners, like just these guys will answer the phone, they'll help us through problems on the phone. That's huge. You need to have relationships that way. But I think there's just a huge theme of I think a bottleneck is there's not enough third party maintenance resources, because it's a very specialized kind of thing, and it's not super complex. It's just a matter of on the job training, learning, etc., and trial and error. Ordering the wrong part here and there and messing up, and so we learned something 2 weeks ago. We bought a store. Actually, all right, I'll keep using this one. The one that's here, same thing. I was out of town for Thanksgiving. My dad turned 80, so we all met down in Alabama, and I'm from Mississippi, by the way. So I don't like to advertise that I went to Alabama, but that's okay.
I was gonna say that's controversial right now with the whole playoff coming up, but keep going.
Sorry, I went to Alabama State. I went to Mississippi State, so we were about as far from the college football playoff as possible this year.
Less controversial.
One or two wins. But you get the call, and it says, "Hey, four dryers all in a row, so 8 pockets, not heating." And it's like, all right, that can't be a machine issue. That's the statistical odds of that happening is that's a Sigma record. So long story short, it had to do with how, and we didn't know this because we didn't wire them in. It came with the store. When you acquire an existing store, you don't know the history of it. And you don't know how the stuff was done. But behind the dryers are these louvers that when the dryer engages, you need fresh air intake, so the louver's open and it allows that air to come in. Well, basically the actuator on this louver that's tied to these 4 machines was faulting out and was popping, so it would not allow the heat circuit to engage and then let the dryers heat up. But that was the first time we'd really dealt with that, and it just took a lot of, you're hypothesizing that what governs these dryers. We think it's a louver. You call a couple people. So you're still learning. We're 4 years in, man. We're still learning new stuff every single day. But I think maintenance is a big theme. I think there's a lot of when you're an operator, you don't know how to work on your own stuff, or at least have an ability to get somebody on call. You're going to have stuff out of order for a long time. So anybody that's thinking about doing this, if you put in all new equipment, all right, first couple of years, you're not going to have any issues, guys. I mean, not that much. Water valve maybe, but come year 3, 4, 5, if you don't have a maintenance plan or in place, um, have fun. And I
That was
just,
my bonus
yeah,
question you started to tap on a little bit is, another one of the themes that we get constantly on our social posts about anything laundromat is why would I buy it if I could build it myself? So I figure we could kind of end on that question, but a lot of laundry Twitter will argue it's better to build it yourself, have that first 3 to 5 years, but there's some pretty high costs there.
yeah. There's, I look, there's always building is, there's a lot of successful people that have built them. I'll leave you with this is just have a 3 to 5 year plan and be, and if you're in a super small market, maybe it doesn't matter, but if you're going to build one, be in it for the long term because your first couple of years aren't going to be very good. If you think that this is like you're going to have grand openings and all this kind of stuff, sure, but if you're going to go into an area that's already being serviced well, I think it takes a little while to acquire that customer base. So just be ready for a year or two of cash burn. So I prefer, when you buy a business, so go away from the laundries. When you buy a business, like let's say I'm going to go buy a HVAC company. What am I really buying? I'm buying the staff can leave any day. But you're buying know-how, but you're really buying a client list. Laundries aren't that different. When you buy one, you're buying a client list that generally goes to that laundry that lives around there. And then there are obviously people that travel around or whatever, but part of what you're buying is a client list. So it's nice to be, maybe it's a conservative side of me, but when you buy an existing business and you buy it and leverage it correctly, you are cash flowing day one as long as you know what you're doing. So I'd rather take something like that and try and optimize it. We may build one day. We probably will. I think we've learned enough now to be able to do it.
You don't have to release the grand plans just now, but I know at some point it might be an option for you guys given your footprint.
I'll be honest. I just think there's enough bad operators out there that have decent infrastructure. I'd rather just buy their infrastructure and make it better.
Yeah. Plus, it's something you're comfortable with. But I think, thanks so much, for taking the time today. I just want to give you one more chance for those out there that are maybe brokers. What is your group looking to buy in terms of profile for some of these laundromats? Help kind of maybe plug you there and see if we can get some opportunities your way. And thanks again for the time.
Yeah, no, I love networking. Appreciate the time, Dennis. Obviously, we had lunch in New York a couple weeks ago. It was cool to connect, and I've great sushi, by the way. That was a very interesting spot. I love that.
I'm glad that place is still open. That place has been there forever, so it's a good sign that Manhattan's healing.
They run a ship there. That place was awesome. Yeah, I mean there's really nothing that I'm not game to look at. It's been really cool, honestly, just getting the network with everybody's doing it kind of their own way, because there's not one model that's correct. But it's been fun. We got to meet some other operators in New York that are doing something kind of similar in a different area. But it's just been awesome there's a lot of good people in this industry. But I mean, selfishly, like this is, I'll be 40 next year. I'd like to, eventually diversify and get into some other verticals or potentially buy something that can be layered into the laundromat business. I think about things that we pay for, right? We pay a lot of money for HVAC stuff. We pay a lot of money for accounting, et cetera. So, I enjoy business. I hunt all the bad business sites online all the time. There's probably some opportunities there, but so feel free to reach out if anybody's curious. Happy to have a conversation. So
yeah, and John's Carpool CEO on Twitter. It's carpool_CEO, where he does most of his damage. But we'll make sure to put that in the description. And thanks so much for joining us. For those interested in working with John, feel free to reach out to him through social media, and we'll get this up online. I think it'll be a great episode for those interested in learning more about the laundry world. So thanks so much.
All right.